My boyfriend's back and God bit out his eyeball. Speaking of gods, Clapton is one, so don't disparage him or you will straight up get shanked. The Messiah has a pine cone and Herr Starr has a spigot dick, so stay tuned. We're talking about all of it in the Preacher After Show, Season 4, Episode 8, Fear the Lord.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
What up, everybody?
Yeah,
Welcome to the Preacher After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. We are talking about Preacher. Go figure, right? Season 4, Episode 8, Fear the Lord. I'm your host, Alana Jordan, and today I am joined by an amazing panel. Two of my favorite gentlemen. The boys are back in town. Look at this. Oh, I'm into it. Dave Child, the Preacher comic expert, filling us in on all of the dudes.
Comics, and my name is Dave Child. Hi. I can't wait to talk about some spigots and how very different Cass is from the comics. It's very funny.
And one of the comic experts that I have known for the longest, actually. I've known this man for over 10 years. Knows just about everything about superhero TV and movies. So great to have you back here, Alex LaFosta.
What an introduction. Thank you very much, Lady Jordan. Very excited to talk about how I straight up fell in love with Humperdew today.
Humperdew, pinecone. Humperdew is amazing. This whole show is amazing. It's crazy that this is the 8th episode. So this is the anti-penultimate episode forever of Preacher.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
We're getting to the end. We're getting to the apocalypse.
And speaking of getting to the end, make sure that you stay for the whole show, because not only will we be breaking down the entire episode, giving our thoughts, our comments at the end, we'll also have a special segment, Page Flipped, where we talk about...
We're getting out of the page.
Where we talk about how the comics differ and have their similarities with the show. And we'll also be giving our predictions for the final 2 episodes of Preacher ever. But kicking it off, what were your overall thoughts of this episode?
I thought it was pretty good. This is like, it's interesting to see how they're ranking, getting towards the end here, and like they're also hitting beats from the comics. It's kind of nice that they're having these moments that are just like, remember these guys, we're putting them in, remember like this happens, we're putting it in, keep going. We're getting stuff in, but still it's very different. Like God, having Jesus and Hitler as supporting characters and almost a buddy comedy that's going on.
It's weird.
That's not in the comics at all. Like, Jesus isn't in the comics, whatsoever. You have Humperdew, and then that's as close as you get to Jesus. So this is very different. And also, Humperdew has been around a lot longer than he is in the comics. So that's interesting.
This is the new do.
It's
They do who this? They do it. Yeah, I'm very excited to see how the Hitler Jesus storyline ends up. And I actually really like this episode too for a lot of the developments that they had there, and with God and Preacher. I'm not as well versed with the comic book, but I do know certain beats that are in the comic book, and it's cool that it seems like they've reached a couple of different cool moments that are in the books without it making it feel like it was ham-fisted or just like it didn't seem like it was fan service or anything like that. So I'm excited to see where the rest of the series goes as we go forward. Last 2 episodes.
It's so crazy that this is the end here, but kind of talking about the Grail and this whole Jesus, Hitler, everything. And then of course
still bothers me a little bit.
It is quite odd. And then the most troubling character, probably story arc, Klaus Starr. So we'll talk a little bit about him and kind of what's happened at the Grail. We open with poor Klaus, who is having this flashback to his Little Mr. Dusseldorf contest.
Little Mr. Dusseldorf.
Little Mr. Dusseldorf.
Well, he was the prettiest boy.
For the 4th year in a row.
He keeps winning because he's so pretty with his little haircut.
His little blonde bowl cut.
I love how they didn't get like a young Klaus. They just put him in a wig.
Yeah, they went very like Wet Hot American Summer with it. It's like, we don't care if he's not age appropriate.
We don't want to pay. We don't want to pay for a new, younger Klaus. People get it. Just do it.
Plus, if it's like part of like a dream sequence, which they kind of made it gives them a little bit more flexibility for it. He was just then remembering in his dreams the beatdown that he got from the jealous little pretty boys.
It is interesting because I don't remember. It must be in the comics, but it might not be how he actually got the scar on his eye.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember it. I definitely don't think it's this way. I don't think he's as vain in the comics as he is in this.
And this kind of became a later thing. Like, this wasn't even like his vanity wasn't really approached in the first like introduction of him. It was just like this season that he was like, and remember, I am beautiful. And we're like, what?
Okay, dude.
Like, okay, I guess we will remember that now.
I guess eye of the beholder.
And he's like, just the one though.
Yeah, I feel like his vanity was like sort of given to him as a motivation post. Like it's like, well, at some point Jesse's gonna die, and he's not gonna have his like revenge motivation anymore. So he needs something like beyond that. So maybe that's like why the writers like interjected that like little bit in there, like with him wanting to be pretty again.
This was also, I think, an introduction to a lot of people that his first name was Klaus. I feel like that's not something that, if they have said it before, they didn't really register it, because you think of him as Herr Starr, which is like basically Mr. Starr.
Mr. Starr.
So like learning that it's Klaus in the chat, people are talking about how they're learning that his name is Klaus.
It's Klaus. A star for a star, Klaus.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, he wakes up to these very kind people, Carl, Ernie, and Cyrus, and is crying because they're showing him kindness, because they tried to save everything they could of his genitals, which turned out to be nothing.
Who are these people?
Well, this is the craziest thing, is like, then we find out that they're actually these like hills have eyes type people that are like cutting his leg off and eating it like American Horror Story Roanoke style.
Right. This was another like people that they brought from the comics, but in the comics it happens very similar, I believe. It's after the big kind of atomic bomb explosion, big fight with God and other people. It's a bit set up a bit differently in the comics, but it's also like they're also in the middle of America. So this time they're in Australia, but these like hillbilly people don't even have Australian accents. One has a British accent.
It's like what, and then one of them just straight up is like meh. Wub.
Yeah, it's great.
Very, very odd, but
it's all part of God's plan.
It's all part of the plan. Yes. And we see the unfortunate Dick Spigot. Dick.
Oh boy.
Which, by the way, Spigot, we found out, spelled with a G. Fun fact of the day.
Spigot. Now you're learning how to spell spigot.
D-I-C-K. Spigot Dick.
So yeah, just in case you had your Spigot Dick tweets ready, make sure you're spelling it right.
We also found out how they can really show full frontal on AMC. Just replace the dick with a spigot.
And then you're fine. It's no deal.
You can get all the full frontal that you want.
Here's Starr showing all he's got, which is not
very much. I do love, though, that when we see them coming in with this song, they're like, thigh time, our favorite time. And you're like, oh, God, this is about to get so bad. Featherstone's just like, enough with this nonsense, sir. Okay, well, that's your leg on I'll carry you. Don't worry. I mean, like, she just really is, like, the definition of loyalty.
Yeah, she's straight up in love with Herr Starr. It's crazy, their relationship.
Yeah.
But also, like, Herr Starr just does not recognize her at all.
Not.
At all, does not care, like, even a little bit. Like, I don't think he even knows her name. He knows Hoover, too.
I mean, I would say maybe things are about to change, but I even doubt it.
I doubt it. I feel like now even more, because if he's regaining his beauty, which we'll get into, too. We have back at the Grail.
Before we move off the spigot dick for a second, I know we're probably going to get back on that spigot dick.
When can you not get off the spigot dick?
Always
it's
on
an
that spigot dick.
situation with the spigot
And remember,
dick.
every spigot is a little different, and sometimes you got to figure out how to turn it on. Yeah. But when I was watching this, I'm watching this in the middle of AfterBuzz Studios, which is just a hallway of TVs, and I'm watching it, and I just love that in the middle of it, someone walked by me in the middle of the studios. It was just like, I'm sorry, does that man have a fountain for a dick? And I was like, yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
I don't want to get into it, but that's the show. Like, I love that this is the weirdest show to just casually flip through, and then suddenly you land on this, and then it's like,
I would just love though for him to walk by the next scene, which is then Jesus and Hitler, like Jesus being like, I don't know, Hitler. I don't really feel good about this. And Hitler's like, no, this is totally the right thing. And he's like, I don't know, because I'm Jesus and I feel kind of weird about it, and you're Hitler, so probably I shouldn't go with your gut.
No, he's like, listening to Hitler.
That's the thing that I'm like, why is Jesus an idiot in this? Like, I mean, it's like, it's excessive.
I don't like it. It's it's the one thing of the show that, like, they've built up these Jesus and Hitler characters, and it's the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable. Like, never mind the spigot dick. I feel like the Hitler helping out Jesus and becoming almost friends, I would feel more comfortable was like if it was Jesus and Satan, but the fact that it's Hitler. It
makes it worse. I don't know why. It makes it worse. I swear it does. But then the one thing that I did really like was Jesus' b-boy dance.
Oh, the b-boy dance.
It's tricky. Where he's like, you want a dancing Messiah? Watch this. And Jesus just like, I can spin on my head. Look what I can do. What?
I would have loved to see like some of the practices with Hitler and Jesus. Hitler's like 1 and 2 and 3. Like just trying to get the routine down perfect.
No, Jesus.
It's not my temple. Not mine temple. Not mine temple.
But then we get this really, really sad kind of realization where Starr is like, look, this isn't my call. It's God's call. And he doesn't want you. He wants Humperdew. Never you. Never you, Jesus. And it's like, why is everyone being so mean to Jesus?
It's also strange because they have like written themselves into a corner here where Jesus is around. So it does make you keep wondering, why don't they just get Jesus? Like, why isn't Jesus?
So that's why they have these scenes, I think,
They have to. That's why they really have to enforce the fact that it's like, no, Humperdew, not Jesus, Humperdew. And we get to see kind of why. We get to start to fall in love with Humperdew.
Well, before we get into that, kind of a little bit of Herr Starr's wrap-up here, too, because... We'll kind of tie this into Humperdew with Cass and Tulip, because ultimately this is when these storylines kind of cross over, is via Humperdew. But it gets so bad at this point that looking at himself with his squeaky leg that he's dragging with his eye and his everything, has his little Mr. Dusseldorf sash. And decides to just say goodbye, cruel world. Yeah, and instead he says goodbye, clamped nips. Why did you clamp your nips?
Well, he always has the clamped nips.
I know, but it's like, dude, take off your nip clamps when you're hanging yourself.
That's the thing about Herr Starr, too. He kind of likes to be punished. That's kind of his thing. Or it was, until they switched it to him being vain. So it's kind of weird, because I think they realized, we don't want to make it so he's into punishment because it keeps happening to him. Mm-hmm. We want to make it so he's like vain suddenly. So they kind of switch his motivations. happens.
Nobody will notice. Everyone who watches this show is stoned off their ass.
kind of true. But also,
We're like, we noticed.
but the thing about that, like, when he started to hang himself, the first thing I thought was, that's a terrible knot. That's like not.
It's not gonna hold.
That's not the
gonna
knot.
hold. It's like a silk sash, and he just brings it this way. I mean, all my Boy Scoutism was just kind of like, no, that's not the knot you want when you hang yourself in the middle of an office.
He's a very learned man. Maybe it was a cry for help. You know, maybe he just
Well,
just
that's
did
what
that,
it ended up being. Yeah, I mean,
true.
good call. Is like it is all kind of like God's plan, and God does just show up, and He's like, look. Why? I thought you wanted to be beautiful. Why are you throwing in the towel? And he's like, because you've been torturing me. You sent a freaking dingo to bite my wiener off. Like, what do you want from
And he's
me?
like, that's because you didn't ask.
And he's like,
God,
yeah,
God,
I'm
come
passive aggressively. If you had just said, I lost him. Where is he? You're omnipotent. Can you tell me where you see him? And he's like, I'm watching him have dinner right now. So I'll make you pretty if you go get him.
All he needed to do 3 months ago. Also, at this point, we've already done the skip 3 months. He's got that 3 month beard.
So that's what we're going into now is the Cass Tulip storyline, which first starts out with this wrathful storm, as Cass describes it. Like it looks like the Old Testament or the New Testament or Old Testament. Old Testament's scarier than New Testament. Wrathful storm. So they're saying, look, we're going to bring Humperdoo out. This is probably where God is because it's this whatever storm. Yeah. God likes rain, right? This is probably God-like. He wasn't in the church, so he's probably in this rainstorm. So they bring him out, and the whole thing is that she wants to see God seeing them.
Right.
Because even as Cass is saying, look, he's omnipotent, which should have been kind of a clue to Herr Starr anyway, that months ago he's like, just ask God where he is. But he's saying, because he's omnipotent, he's going to know. And she's like, he killed Jesse in front of me. I need to know that he is going to see it. So we're not going anywhere until he shows up and I see his face. Yeah. And it turns out that they're there for, 3 months. Which is an insane amount of time to just be sitting there waiting on God.
And they become a very adorable family.
What I do love, though, about AfterBuzz TV is that unlike this scene that takes an ungodly amount of time, AfterBuzz TV makes it so simple and fast and easy for you to find all of your favorite after shows.
Oh, fantastic segue.
Wow, yeah.
Yes.
I was like, where'd she go?
So be sure to check out all of the after shows here on AfterBuzz TV. We have a plethora and multitude, so rate, subscribe, give us those thumbs up, those 5 stars. They've been conveniently broken down into categories, so if you like the comedies, the superhero, the sci-fi, click on our stuff, man. Just keep watching it. Preacher might be over soon, but we'll still be around. You can keep looking at our faces. Why not? Plus, also, we just love talking to you guys about all. Go ahead. I'm like, we love talking to you guys, and I cut you off and don't let you speak.
I just said yep.
Oh, cool. Yep. So if you have any comments like yep, then be sure to leave them below. And we love, again, hearing from you. So talk to us in the chat. Shout out to Ivan Soto, who is always in the chat as well. And thank you guys so much for watching us here at AfterBuzz TV.
Yeah.
But so we have
AfterBuzz TV will take you to the moon.
to the moon.
To the moon.
To the moon, Alice.
This is nice. Very different. This is nice to have like Cass be the one that'd be like, I don't want to kill him. I like him too much.
Oh my God. I will say the Humperdoo pinecone scene just freaking got me when they come in with the pinecones and he's like, who do we got? We got Mommy Pinecone, Daddy Pinecone, and who's this?
Humperdoo
Pinecone. So excited.
And she was like,
like,
all right.
Okay, well, are the explosives on this man that we're going to blow to bits? Because this is why I've been sitting here for 3 months. Like, let's not get too attached.
Yeah.
But they have this whole rehearsal of like, they're changing out the batteries every day for whenever God shows. They're going to be like, hey, go get into this box. We're blowing you up in front of.
Right.
Like, that's pretty rough.
Yeah.
However, even Tulip seems to be swayed a little bit because, Cass is saying, it's not just me, right? There's something about him. And when she finally has this moment that we see on her face, like, yeah, there is something about this guy, is when they're out in the woods and he goes, this full, like, Disney princess moment where he's just chilling with these deer and the lights coming down and it's this heavenly scene until Humberdeau's like, dog. He's like, sure, it's a dog.
Yeah, it's a dog.
Yeah, it's a dog.
I love how like Cass was like, that was some biblical shit. That was it.
Yeah.
That was great. That was
Hearing him just say biblical too, like it's just awesome.
It's really nice. And then we also have the blueberry burgers that lead to a very
oh my god. So this kind of ties into we see earlier that if Herr Starr goes and gets Humberdeau, then he will get his beauty.
Yeah.
So he does, and they set up a vomit pulse satellite outside. So
is that what it was?
Yeah, that's why they threw up. It wasn't the blueberries.
I thought it was the blueberries.
Don't put blueberries on burgers.
Up until this very moment, I thought it was like, it's poison blueberries in your burgers. I thought it was that, and you're right. It's that pulsing thing. That's why they were worried.
It's a vomit pulse, and that's why it was such a projectile vomit too. That wasn't fully explained, and so
it also didn't incapacitate them that much. They slipped on the vomit at one point.
Yeah, and it made them throw up, but they weren't doubled over in pain. They were just like, here's our gross projectile vomit that is clearly a hose behind me that we show in profile because that's
You never seen this trick before.
I guess it's like it would have. I guess like a poop one would have been a brown note would have probably incapacitated them more.
Yeah,
probably.
but I think we're just like, we don't want to watch Julep like shit herself repeatedly in the fight. Like, that's not what we're going for. I mean,
well, maybe you don't, but I'm sure there's plenty of audience members that do.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was like. Oh my god, they have to fight when they're like covered in all this vomit, like both of them, and then Tulip starts puking too. It was a lot. It was a lot with the puke, but
a puke note. I guess that would be a puke note. You get
puke note, not the brown note.
Is the other way around, but I don't know what a puke note because it comes in sometimes it's pink.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. It could be any color.
Who is it? Tell me more.
It depends a lot on what you ate previously. If you
we got Vomit Pulse. That's probably a pretty good name.
Vomit Pulse, yeah, which is also the name of my band.
Sounds a good name. It's a good name for
we are Vomit Pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll hit you like an axe to the chest, which brings us to Tulip. Hitting Cassidy with an axe to the chest.
Yeah, like he's freaking Scatman Crothers. Like he just straight up hits him right in the chest.
Wait, hold on.
You had that ready?
I'm always ready.
Again, the voice of God in the booth. That's Ryan, our amazing engineer, killing it on the sound effects tonight. Yes.
You know what? That also sounds like vomit at the same time.
Oh my God.
It kind of works for both.
Dual Squish.
Yeah, perfect.
Dual Squish.
The name of my other band. That's our opener. So, anyway, then we come to the final question, which is we see Tulip then go take the remote and Humberdeau to the moon, and then being hooked up, the Grail takes them. By the time she does finally hit the button, he's out of range.
Yeah, she does hit the button.
She does hit the button,
but she hesitated enough that
that it didn't go off. And then comes the big question of what are they going to do now? Which she says, of course. Same thing we do everything, Pinky, try to save him. We're going to go and get him. We got to go get him. And then Cass asks to save him or to kill him. Mm-hmm. So I have to ask you guys, do you think at this point, is it in her mind to save him or to kill him?
I think in her mind, it's still you can answer this.
I mean, well, I think in like maybe deep down, like she thinks that she's going there to kill him, but I think that they're going there to save him because I mean, I definitely fell in love with Humberdeau in this episode. The way like his I think, and one of the reasons I think that God in his sadistic way in this fictional creation of him loves him more than Jesus is because he's so imbecilic that he is so pure and innocent, and that's why like Jesus, even though he's only made one mistake in 2,000 years, that's why like God would never love one
time. It was 2,000 years ago.
And like that's why like God will always love Humperdoo more than he'll love Jesus, because Humperdoo is just like kind of he's impossible for him to make any like real mistakes morally, because he's just so.
I don't know though. I mean, he's doing some gross stuff. He's putting his wiener on everything.
The thing is, the thing that keeps me from feeling that, like, I think that's what we're meant to believe, but I keep going back to the dinosaur that ate his poop.
Yeah.
Because the dinosaur that ate his poop was very Humperdoo-like. And the fact that bothered God and Humperdoo doesn't...
You know what? That's true.
It brings up a lot of questions. It's like, what does God want then? I mean, I guess he's a mystery. He's God, but it's still like that dinosaur that eats his own poop keeps me from thinking he just wants someone pure of heart. It makes me think something else is happening.
Well, it seems like, I mean, the direction that it seems to me that they're going is that it's just like, at this point, he's like, whatever. It's, it's time for a do-over. And he's just kind of bored anyway. Like, it's like just such a haphazard thing.
Like he could never be satisfied. Like,
there's a question in the chat of, does Humperdoo actually have a supernatural effect, or is he just lovable?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a combination of both, because I mean, if he is supposed to be the Messiah, then he would obviously have some sort of extra level kind of affections and energy waves that people pick up on.
Energy waves.
Like people are like, he's just got good vibes, man. Like he's got Messiah vibes.
Yeah. But even we remember Jesus saying that most of the stuff that was said about him, his supernatural powers were just made up anyways. Like he didn't even turn like water to wine and stuff. So it seems like Humperdoo can just dance and be real chill, but maybe there is something else. But he doesn't have like the voice of God. He doesn't have what Jesse has.
No, he definitely Genesis has this. That's what makes him so dangerous.
Yeah.
Is because it's this level of power that even like circumvents God and both Messiahs.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I mean, I'd love to that this does tie in, though, that we do see Humperdoo brought back to the Grail, and we see the beautiful Herr Starr. We get the wrap up for him this episode.
Handsome,
He is. I mean, but it's a blonde bowl cut. That it's like, okay, yes, that is clearly.
It's a bit more of a sweeping.
Yeah,
it's a bit more
not
of
as bowly.
Yeah, it's not quite the bowl cut anymore. It's like it's clearly fake.
It looks like Gilderoy Lockhart to me. Like it just.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's that. It's like the captain from Futurama. It's like all the
like the stereotypical I think I'm handsome.
Yeah, hair. That's what that sort of hair is. Just beautiful blonde.
But yeah, we finally hair with some hair, and then we also find out that yes, there is going to be an air date for the apocalypse. The apocalypse is on. An air date for the hair date. And Cass and Julep end up hooking up, and this is the whole thing back to the first episode. We keep getting these things that harken. Before we get to the final scene, the tag out that ties them into this next storyline, let's go ahead and talk about where Jesse's been this whole time.
Right.
Where the hell has been, and where the hell has Jesse been?
He's an owl.
He's having a hell of a time. And we find out too that Fior is so annoyed with them because he's like, after all of this, after knowing God's plan and everything that he's done, you're still loyal to him. Why? What is wrong with you, Custer boy?
And he's still like, it's still a test. It's still a test.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it from him, so I think it's still a test.
This whole time, he keeps having this idea that he's just being tested.
Yeah, which is legit for him to feel that way, because since he's spent a lot of time being tested, like specifically by God, like all the time that he spent out in the ocean and the plane, and like and then the desert. He knows that was God messing with him. So like, how is he to be able to distinguish that from now? And
also, he knows Scripture enough that like he knows hell doesn't even mean the end of stuff, because you did have like Jesus come on down to hell after he martyred himself, and and was like, come on, folks, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're not so good, you're good, you're good, come on. So he knows that there's still maybe an option for like to get into heaven, to still pass the test. If he deals with the pressures of hell, if he keeps going, it still could be a test. And he could take it rather well. He could take hell rather well. It seems like what really affects him is the idea of an apocalypse is the only thing that really he hates. And he feels like if he just goes along with these personal turmoils, the ants up the butt, the fire, the rats in the barrel, like, you know, it could still keep
so
going.
many things. Yeah, and I love too that they have that reference where he's like the film star. I'm kind of going back to how does he still think this is a test is because he also watched his father get shot in front of him. And his dad's words to him, basically, and his entire life was to have faith in that all of this is part of God's plan and that God is just testing you. And that you're a Custer, so this is what you do. And, you know, all of this is because of this quintessential moment, this defining moment in his life where his father's killed in front of him. And so when he's saying, look, the film strip isn't doing anything because every time I close my eyes since I was 10 years old, I've been seeing this replay. So good luck. Keep showing it. And they're like, oh, really?
That.
Really? Get in the cage. We're putting ants in your butt. How does that feel, Jesse? Does it feel like you got ants in your butt?
Yeah.
Because you do. Forever.
All the way up the nose.
Yeah, that's like telling your teacher that you're bored. She's just going to give you more work.
Don't say that. Come on, man. Just be like, this is a challenge.
He's like, oh, man, this sure is awful. I hope I don't have to keep going through this.
It's like when you're a kid and you get like, you have to get a butt whipping, so you just cry, even though your parents are barely touching you. You're like, it hurts. And they're like, why? Like, does it? What's wrong? My kid's a bitch. Maybe just me. My parents are revealing too much about my childhood at this point. Like, what plays in my film strip.
Yeah.
But then he finally gets this moment of release when he's out of that rat barrel because the saint has saved him.
Oh, boy.
Except for psych.
No.
It was just a simulation.
Yeah.
Do you think that he knew that it was as soon as he was saying, like, this is the most I've heard you talk? That's when it felt to me like he was like, this this doesn't feel real.
I think doubt was starting to come in. I think he was just still trying to feel his way. And then when he sees, like, where did you get the horse? How did we get the horse? How are we even here? Wait, this doesn't add up. That's when he's kind of putting two and two together.
Right.
But it was at least a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
But
what did you? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, just even watching it, like the editing for that particular escape sequence was like so brisk and like almost dreamlike. I even started to think, is this real? Like before he even started telling the story, I was like, this is just happening so fast. Like it doesn't even feel like the rest of the episode. So it did seem kind of dreamlike. So it made sense after that. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is a hallucination.
That's actually a really good point. It was the pacing was kind of more like with Herr Starr's dream that he had versus the actual reality that we've seen, and then seeing that like ethereal fog over the beach, riding the horse through, like all of that did seem very dreamlike. What did you think about the story that he told, though, about the colonel and the general, and the drunk general with the sideways map, and the colonel just following orders who sent his men to the slaughter? Do you think that was a real story that is based on something that happened to the saint, or no?
I don't know if it's necessarily linked to the saint, because I think if you listen to the story, it kind of sounds like more people trying to get him to sit on the throne. You know, because he's basically saying, stop listening to the orders of the general because he's got a sideways map. I actually don't get the twist when the saint was like, no, I was the general. I was like, I feel like that's loses some point because it makes it so it's like, so you're saying I shouldn't listen to your story?
Yeah,
you just taught me a lesson, but you said the problem was I shouldn't listen to you? I think that kind of ruins the point of the story. It's kind of a double negative.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like with him saying that I'm the general makes it kind of seem like it's like, that's much more interesting, but it's not that much more interesting. It kind of, it seems like, maybe they're trying to go for like even me and as the general, I even know like the fault of my ways, but like it's more so like kind of.
I think he should have said, no, I was the slaughter. Like he was the people killing chasing the people over the hill.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
he was the people waiting for them.
Yeah.
Like, something like that would have been more like, oh, crap.
That would have been a lot more poignant, yeah.
But when you're saying you're the general,
He's like,
it's
I was the general, and he's like, so you're full of horseshit, and I shouldn't listen to anything that you say,
See,
and you're gonna
is
leave
this-
me to my death?
is this you asking me to teach you how to read a map? Is that why? Is that the whole point of the story?
He's like, is this just your really like long way of being like, the reason you're sharing your alcohol with me is that you have a problem with alcohol? You have led men to their death, so you're asking me to take this so that you'll be better.
This is how you say you're illiterate, and yes, I will teach you how to read the Saint.
The saint.
The
That's my
saint.
favorite part, is just addressing him as the saint. But yeah, so we figure out that this is just a simulation, and we have Fior's whole thing about like, you're gonna be tortured forever, and we're gonna put molten hot lava on your buttocks and do it like butter on a cracker. And he's like, and you're thinking of different biscuits, British biscuits or crackers, and you're thinking of like down home country biscuits.
Let's not get into
This
the
is
biscuits.
different kinds of biscuits, and God's like, no more biscuit conversation. Jesse, just come out of hell, just come back to life. I can't listen to this
Well,
anymore.
first they force him onto the throne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as soon as his butt hits the throne, he's kind of, or maybe right before, he's kind of sucked out of.
Yeah, that's what
afterlife.
I guess we won't know until next episode, but I was kind of curious whether like he was given the powers of God, and then God is like kind of tricking him into thinking that God he brought him back to life, or if God brought him back to life right before he got the powers of God, just
did
to
feel-
save his own butt.
The question of what's in God's plan and what's there it is, and what's not is like kind of what the whole series is going to hinge on, I think, or the whole ending of this thing is going to hinge on. So you can maybe the thing is he took him out to keep him from getting onto the throne. Like if you take him out at the last minute, then he can't sit on the throne because all the angels are wanting him to sit on the throne,
Right.
or the demons at this point are trying to get him to sit on the throne. So it's like it is an interesting question about like what is part of the plan and what isn't. And I tried to avoid the word,
And Ryan's
but it
like,
didn't
nah,
work.
buddy, I still know what you're talking about.
So now he's back. Now he's back to life.
Back to reality.
Which, he's back to just hell on earth, pretty much.
Yeah.
Where he now is alive and then finally has his big confrontation with God.
He's one-on-one with God.
Which I think, that question that you posed of like, how much of it was God's power versus Jesse's power? Does he know the extent of his power at this point? I think all of that is going to kind of factor in, because right now, Jesse is still a servant of the Lord. He's
Right.
still super subservient, and he meets him. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love how this mirrors that Isaac, that VHS we see of
Yes.
of Isaac of Abraham. and
Abraham.
Isaac, where he's like, where he gets down on his knees, he hugs
Abe.
God. He has a moment, and that's like even the
I was
scene.
gonna do it.
Yeah, I was gonna do it, God.
I love you so much.
Oh, I love you so much, God. Oh,
You
I
don't
was
even
gonna kill
know
my
God.
Isaac. Oh, God.
He was my
Abraham
only
famously from
son.
the
He was my
Bronx.
only son. I was gonna kill him for you.
Oh, God.
I'm a real big fan. Real big fan.
And you saw that like God really wanted that, and it seemed like that's what he really missed, and he got that. And then we get that twist of like, you were so
Still
close.
not enough. Yeah, so we have Jesse saying like, okay, I knew all of this was a test. I knew it was a test, and I passed, and it was all worth it. And I went through hell, literal hell, but it was okay because I was right the whole time. I refused it, and I passed the test. Oh, you were so close. You were tempted. The temptation. Temptation is also a sin. And he's like, you're setting this up where it's impossible. You can't win.
God.
And then, So do you think that was kind of like the thing that's the takeaway from this, is that like this blind faith is just...
It's also, I think the takeaway from it, they really like hit something from theology that always bugs me, which is like the idea of the temptation or the thought to sin in your heart is the same as sinning in life. is something that, like, as a spiritual person but not necessarily a religious person, I always bump up against and I dislike, because it kind of is, to me, I think a big sign of courage is when you have fear but you do it anyways.
Right.
So I think a big sign of righteousness is when you're tempted but you don't do it anyways. Right. And I think that's morally a correct way of looking at things, and that's a big part of what Preacher is about. It's about morality compared to what is told is morality. Right. Like what you actually know is right and wrong compared to what you're constantly told is right and wrong.
Right.
Which we're seeing even reflected with the Jesus-Hitler debate, where he's like, it doesn't feel right.
Right.
You know, like you're saying that this is what is the holy thing and this is what is the right thing, but it feels wrong. Right. So why is there that disconnect? And then being told, oh, well, that's just how it is. Just go with it, basically.
Right, but it's shown even stronger with the Custer and God like interaction here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think in even which is weird that I think at some point God mentions that He gives humankind choice,
free will,
and it's interesting. I think that's the whole thing about free will, is that we have the temptation in our hearts, like that's just going to happen because of the free will that He instilled in us. But we have the right, then we have the ability to choose one way or the other.
Yeah,
and
free will is supposed to be like going against that temptation,
right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of odd that this creation of God, this fictitious creation of God, is just like, but it's not good enough.
That's part of it too. You wanting to do it.
Yeah, well, that's what Jesse even says. He's like, but you made us like this.
Yeah.
Like, this is such a catch-22. And he's like, I made you in my likeness, so you're kind of a dick, basically, is what I'm saying.
It was the moment where I was like, oh, so Catholic. That's the answer. It's Catholicism. That's where we landed on. It could have been so many other ones, but turns out
it's bottlenecks to
it's just right.
Like, there you go.
All signs now point to Catholicism.
But we know that there still is some unknown aspect of the plan at play that Jesse is involved in to some degree, and God also says, oh, and bring your friends. So we know that Tulip and Cass are also going to be serving this role in the apocalypse. But before he does that, he gives him a little don't forget me by biting out his eyeball, which was, we'll talk a little bit later in the page flipped segment, but that was just straight out of the comics.
Mm-hmm.
So
it was also interesting, if you noticed, Custer never tried the voice with God during this scene. Mostly because, and actually I think the scene went really well because of that, because it makes you think. There's a lot of moments where it could have been like, why didn't he do the voice? But every single time there's a turn in the emotion of the scene, it's answered with another kind of distraction almost. So he doesn't have the time to even consider using the voice on God, because first he's happy to see God. He's like happy that it's done. Then he's trying to process the fact that God's betraying him, and then right at the moment where he's about to process that fact, his eye is bitten out. Right. So that distracts him even more, and then God's gone.
God's like keeping you on your toes, biting at your eyes.
So there's never a chance where you can even try to do the voice. There is something in the chat where they bring up like, why doesn't Genesis work on the Saint anymore? I don't actually know. That's from the previous one.
Thing? Yeah, they had said last season they basically made him impenetrable to where nothing, even the because he
used to work on him.
Because he was like of the earth, but then when he was in hell, it was something where he like
had to deal with the devil.
It was some like it's some like little specific thing where they had it where it was explained but not fully.
But it was
basically
gets a little,
like because he no longer is damned to roam the earth,
right,
and he now is in hell. Anybody who is earthbound, Jesse can use the voice on, but because he no longer, he's like.
But he is.
It's a weird thing.
This is all a long way of saying we don't know. Yeah. But
it's all conjecture.
The reason why I'm asking about that is because we don't know if the word can work on God.
Right.
That's a big question about whether the word will work and what it can actually do to God.
Word up.
So.
Yeah, and even it makes also sense that he wouldn't use it right away in this moment, or at least he'd have hesitation about using the voice, because he's kind of been tested this whole season prior to this. Like every time he's used the voice, it's kind of turned out badly for him. So it would make sense that he would have hesitation using it at this point.
And it would also mean why like God has kept his distance until he has tested him enough to be like, no, this guy's going to be happy to see me. This guy's going to be fine to see me. And so when he does and then teaches him a lesson, that might be enough to be like, and God's out. Okay, bye.
As soon as he takes some of that hubris away, too, it's like then Jesse won't come in guns blazing, which his biggest weapon is the voice. So the fact that, I think that's a really good point that he doesn't use it and he doesn't use the word. Now, we do see, though, one of my favorite transitions in this is when we have Cass and Tulip hooking up, and then the music starts playing. Isaac Alberniz's Asturias starts playing, and then we...
No, it's not that song.
No, that's not it at all.
Oh, man. Let's talk about
even
sex
a little bit
during that scene.
No, not even a little bit.
10
Not where I was
stars.
going, but I'll take it. But then it... The voice of God, ladies and gentlemen, with a summary of Preacher in one word. Whoops. So we do see this pan over then to this guy in a prison jumpsuit playing guitar who is shanked for smack talking Clapton.
Yeah.
And it's
which we find out after he's like, Clapton's God, right after
Clapton
the
is a
shank.
god after
Like,
shanking him.
That's what this is about?
Yeah. But it's really all of this was a little bit of fan service just so we could see Eugene come up and pick up the guitar.
Right. That
So I was like, I watching it went, Wah!
Yeah, I think we're about to move into...
We'll move into that as well, but before we go into
just remember
our
that
segment,
scene.
chuck that in the back of your mind. However,
setting up something.
The very final last scene is Jesse being reunited with Tulip and Cass.
Yeah.
This post-coital kind of euphoria that is broken by the fact that Cass is then like, and we even see this hug and Cass just like, of course.
I mean, it was an interesting...
Of course.
Yeah, it was an interesting reaction to Cass because you could read it as that, and you can also read it as, I'm just happy he's back. Like, it also is like, it's him kind of processing all of those emotions all at once. It was a nice little, like, moment, and I like it because it also doesn't feel... We'll get into the page flipped version of this in a second, but it doesn't feel like a portrayal so much as like they really do feel so close, the three of them now. And it in a way that's almost like familial but incestuous. But it all makes kind of sense. It brings them actually closer in this way.
There's a lot of codependent friendships that we see on television that are very incestuous, but
it also took 3 months, and after 3 months of like basically having this family life where they've become playing house, it totally made sense. None of it felt like it was Tulip acting too fast or Cass betraying Jesse. It kind of felt like, this makes sense.
But this is why it felt to me like it was Cass being like, of course, because it was 3 months. They didn't do anything for 3 months, and then the day after, Jesse's like, I'm back. What up?
And also we also have to remember that God said like, you still have a role to play, and don't forget to bring your friends.
Bring your friends. They're
so
part
they
of
have
it.
a role. Yeah.
Which, I think all of this, which we'll get into predictions, but before we hop into all of that, any last thoughts on this episode? Were you going to say something prediction-y before I cut you off?
Nothing super prediction-y. I was just curious, like, I think it's interesting that the Jesse would like do exactly what God wants him to do, knowing that it's probably not going to work out in Jesse's favor. But I'm curious to see what
that's been Jesse's problem since the beginning. He's like, I see a vision. I'm going to it. Wait, God knows I'm here? Yeah, man. He sent you a vision.
He's got tiny little models of you.
Yeah, man. Why do you think it's a trap? I mean, you knew this was a trap.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see what Jesse Cassidy and Tulip do next. Hopefully they create a little throuple, or what the holy quadruped's gonna do. Jesse, Humperdoo, Jesus, and God.
Oh, I thought you were calling the throuple the holy. I was like, all right, man.
Like, all right, I'll go there.
Let love be love.
Any last thoughts on this episode before we dive into our page flipped?
No, I'm ready. Just also remember that because we have some questions about it, that they're at the Holy Grail Motel, which is right outside where the Grail is. That's where they kept meeting. That's why he said, I think his name's Camille. Camille, we'll be there in a second, and then surprised to see Preacher.
Yeah.
It's the hotel they've been to before, where they used to fight the Grail, where the angel and the devil had to fight. It's the same place.
Yeah.
Just reminding people.
And the Holy Grail has been just getting beat up to hell.
Yeah, it's really now it's the Holy Gale.
Yeah, which is like,
great.
Okay, who's Gail? She seems nice.
But not named Gale.
So we are going to now go into our special segment. If you have not read the comics and you don't want the comics spoiled, I would recommend skipping this section. I'm gonna let you know right now we are gonna spoil some things from the comics, but diving right into it, I think probably the biggest thing this episode was Jesse having his eye bit out and having that, it just pisses me off because this was such a big question from the comics was, is this going to happen?
Right.
And it was answered pretty much from the very first episode because in the opening credits, they showed Jesse with an eye patch. And I will not forgive this. I'm sorry. I'm pissed off.
Kind of annoying, yeah.
Yeah, the promos for the show and the opening things, they're not very good at keeping spoilery stuff away, which is too bad.
I didn't even watch the next week on for this because I was like, I don't want you to show me everything.
It didn't show
me
everything. It
everything.
didn't show you a lot. It didn't show you a lot, but I saw it.
Yeah, certain things you want to save for when you see it.
What is kind of nice from, I would say, the difference between this moment and the comics, from what I can remember of the comics, he kind of knows he's going to confront God, and he has kind of a vendetta against God as he's trying to find him. He doesn't have this crisis of faith that has carried him through this show. It's more of he believes his morals are right and God's morals are wrong, and he wants to confront him and tell him about it. That's kind of where he's at. What was kind of nice about this now was it reminded me of the story of Odin, actually, because when he finally confronts God and gains the knowledge that God is not morally right in this case, that's when he loses an eye, which is very much what happens to Odin, where he loses an eye from the tree of knowledge. It's
tree gains wisdom,
once he gains wisdom. It's just kind of nice.
Huh. I never thought about it that way, but that's very, very insightful.
And it's this whole an eye for an eye thing we even see with Herr Starr. It's like they are getting very literal with their metaphors.
And it also happens very quickly in the comics. There is no, I think everything that happens from 2 episodes ago to this, when it comes to Jesse, happens in a couple of pages. A few panels.
But I will say though, the extreme close-up of the eye and God biting, that was straight and an exact recreation of one of the panels, of the panel where he gets his eye bit out, except for it didn't show the drawn-on blood, and it wasn't as gore. It's gorier in the comic, which was weird. And also, the show is typically very gory.
God is kind of more of a golden-y God rather than a guy that shows up in a Winnebago. It's a bit
his
different.
RV, who's just
Yeah, but it would be kind of cheap if that was the God. It wouldn't look as good because the fact that it's a guy in a Winnebago
wouldn't have looked as
who
good.
has the answers. But the thing that actually, the big thing for me was
Eugene.
Well, it was Eugene. We can talk about Eugene.
I lost my mind with Eugene.
Yeah, let's talk about Eugene, because they are setting up. This is something we've mentioned before in this section of the show, where we really miss the idea of Arseface becoming a pop star, like a rock star, because he becomes that in the comics. He basically becomes Nirvana because he actually shoots himself in the face. Because of Kurt Cobain. So he kind of becomes Kurt Cobain.
And then it's like a whole thing where he has people who are trying to recreate his Kurt Cobain tribute and then are killing themselves. And it's like a whole weird, intricate thing, which I'm not condoning that, but I'm saying I do want to see a rock star Eugene. It's something from the comics that I'm especially because Eugene has been so sweet this adaptation.
Yeah.
He's been so different. Like, I want to see him, like, now that he's like, you know what? I have lost my faith, and I'm using it to just be, like, a freaking, like, rock star.
I bet it's going to be a different type of rock star. I bet it's going to be a sweeter rock star. I think it's going to be him mumbling, but it'll be like instead of the Nirvana mumble, it'll be like the
Bob Dylan.
No, it'll be like the Bon Iver mumble. It'll be like it'll be like the you can't understand the words that I'm saying, but they're meaning something to you, and
They're
why are you
deep.
crying? And he'll probably perform on TV at some point.
Yeah,
that's coming up.
I really, really hope so.
Yeah. But another thing was the cast finally hooking up with Tulip, and then Jesse showing up. It's just very different from the comics because in the comics you have Cass basically keeping Tulip. We've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. How Cass is keeping Tulip and basically keeping her drugged and is basically raping her throughout the entire thing. And now, to highlight the difference, right before they hook up, I love how Cass is saying, "I'm sorry about mansplaining."
Well, he has an axe in his chest that Tulip put there.
That's like the complete opposite of the toxic, terrible Cass from the comics. And I
love that they made that change, that adaptation, because it's like, I don't want two toxic dudes that I'm supposed to be rooting for. Like, I want like some complicated, meaningful things. But anyway, it's time for predictions. Let's talk about what we think is going to happen.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So we know that this has differed a lot from the comics, so we can't really use the books as a way to kind of cheat our predictions. So this is genuine predictions. 2 episodes left. How do you think they're wrapping it up?
Oh, yeah, I've thought a lot about it. I'm not quite sure because there's so many different ways like it could all turn out, and I'm very interested in how like God's very seemingly intricate plan is going to... no.
You know what? Not this time.
Our God keeping us on our toes too.
I'm very interested to see how his intricate plan is gonna like work out, but I kind of see it where Jesse's going to kill God. I for some reason I just see that that's how it's going to be, and like then just have all the rest of the creatures throughout the universe just work off of their own free will without any omniscient creature being the puppet master. At least that's what I think is going to happen.
There has to be something coming up that it will divert from God's plan. Like there has to be some, I don't even know if that was it, but there has to be some like thing that we don't understand how it could right now, because everything that keeps happening seems to be in the plan. So have it like separate from that. It has to be something that we have to see God get surprised, and he gets confronted with this surprise. And we do see, the one thing we do see in the predictions of the next week on that I saw is a lot of like him showing off the fact that he doesn't have an eye underneath his eye patch, and he actually puts on the eye patch, which is weird. We already know he doesn't have it. But we do see the saint confront God. That there is a moment where a gun is pointed at God. So we don't know what this... Remember that the saint's gun killed the devil. Can the saint's gun kill God? But I also think the end of this is going to... The only parallel is going to do with the comics is I think we're going to end at the Alamo. And I think there's going to be a shoot-off, big standoff at the Alamo. But it's going to be different from the comics. So be interested to see what happens.
Yeah, but we'll still remember it. We'll still remember the Alamo. I think that ultimately, part of the plan is going to be that Tulip killing Humperdew is going to be an act of a killing of an innocent, the true innocence, but Tulip isn't going to do it, and that's going to thwart God's plan. And that's going to be something he wasn't expecting. That will then circumvent the plan for the apocalypse. But we'll see.
We'll see.
And you guys let us know what you think in the comments below. Let us know all of your predictions. And in the meantime, where can everybody keep up with you guys?
You can find me on all platforms at Alex LaFosta. Instagram and Twitter.
You can find me at MR Dave Child on the Twitters and the Instagrams and DaveChild.com because my name, it's Dave Child.
Yeah. And my name is Alana Jordan. You can find me on Twitter at Alana Jordan and on Instagram at Alana J. Jordan. And now you can find me as the new host for MEA Worldwide as well. So I'll be doing different interviews with a bunch of different celebrities. So check it out, meaww.com. And be sure to check us out next week where we will be talking
Our founder,
about the
Kevin
second to
Undergaro,
last
and me,
episode
Maria
ever
Menounos, would like to thank you for
of
tuning in to AfterBuzz TV.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.